Hi, I'm Mike Field.
I'm Mike Butler.
And you're listening to the Forgotten Cinema Generic Ad.
Join us every Wednesday as we talk about films that seem to be forgotten by audiences, whether it be because a more popular movie was released at the same time or the film simply didn't catch on with an audience in its initial run. We'll discuss what we love about the film, maybe don't love about it, but we'll always recommend you revisit it. You never know, you might find your own forgotten gem. Forgotten Cinema is available wherever you get your podcasts or at ForgottenCinemaPodcast.com or ForgottenEntertainment.com, as we are a proud part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
I swear I talk more in the episodes.
Hello, and welcome to Recent Activity, your new favorite entertainment review podcast that attempts to cover every film, every show, all at once. I am your co-host, Andrew Morgan. Joining me today from the UK is the Duke of Bettingham himself, the co-host of Is It Worth It, a film podcast, Mr. David Long. How are you, sir? Been a long time.
Andrew, it's always a privilege talking to you. It's great to be here. It's great to talk Oscars. And I'm in awe of you. We tried to watch everything film-related on Is It Worth It, the film review podcast, and you've gone one step further. You're just watching everything that's ever been created. And
Yes.
You're doing a damn good job at it, my friend. So, yeah, really looking forward to talking about the Oscars. And, it's going to be fun, and it's going to cause me to lose my mind already more than I've already lost it, put it that way.
Of course. And yes, while I appreciate the your sentiments and the compliment or whatever, it's exhausting, and I don't recommend it to anyone else on the planet. So expect a different, maybe, podcast that talks a big game, but who knows what we're going to cover as the year progresses. David, of course, I've been on your podcast before, and especially for the Road to the Oscars segment you like to do every year. That's why I brought you on, of course, because we could talk Oscars all day. The nominations are officially out after, stuff like Golden Globes and other nominating bodies have had their fun, too. We're gathering a lot of evidence as time progresses here without getting too far into the guilds, which, of course, is probably the biggest precursors leading up into really knowing what's going on. So we're a little early, even though it's fun to talk at any point in the process, because that's when we go the most crazy. So what I wanted to hear from you first is, now that the nominations are out for the Oscars coming out in, if you could believe it, only a little over a month away. So we're right down into the teeth of it now. What are your general feelings after the nominations happened and you took it all in?
Nominations day for me is one of my favorite days of the year as a film lover, as I would say a wannabe Oscars pundit, someone who's always loved the Oscars. It's always full of drama and it's always full of excitement. And do you know what? It was a strange one because there was a lot of things that I expected, but there were a few curveballs. And these curveballs were ludicrous. One obviously being, my word, I've forgotten her name.
Andrew
Riseborough. That's how Riseborough. That's it. She was that memorable that I forgot her name. But do you know what I mean? You couldn't make it up. No, Riseborough. Obviously, that was a thing about a week or so before nominations.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is like a Twitter thing. Obviously, there was a lot of big names behind her campaign, but I thought, this surely can't land, and then it lands, and then there's obviously Viola Davis and Deadwyler who would be snubbed, if you want to call it a snub, which
I do.
You mentioned evidence. All the evidence for Viola Davis, she hits everywhere.
Yeah. Choice,
Globe, SAG, BAFTA. For someone like me that looks at the precursors, she has to be number one on your paper for predicting Oscars, for an Oscar nomination, but she obviously missed. So yeah, it was exciting. There was a lot of drama. From a personal perspective, I'm not a huge fan of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Ooh, you're the one.
I have to be honest, it was not one of my least favorites of the year. I just really struggled with getting into the film. Now, I appreciate the performances are great, the editing's great, visually it's fantastic.
Sure.
So as a film, I can really get behind it. But for me personally, I struggled. So I did think, how is the Academy going to take to that kind of movie?
Right.
And very well is the answer.
Yeah.
Because obviously it leads with 11. I was delighted to see All Quiet on the Western Front do well with 9 after its really good showing at BAFTA.
Well, and
obviously
remember, it was my number one choice of Netflix film of 2022. So that always carries a lot of weight, David.
Well, of course, and I think the Academy, both on my side of the pond and yours, has taken note.
Of course.
But in all seriousness, no, and you're right. I mean, it's not only the best Netflix have offered in 2022. I think it's legitimately one of the best things they've ever put up on their platform. I think it's a superb film.
Yeah.
And then, there was a few other things that I think we could talk about. I mean, Women Talking, only 2 nominations, including picture. I mean, that struck me as odd.
There was a moment there where we all were saying, is this movie going to get shut out? So honestly, to get 2 of the majors, I was a little shocked and almost considered them picking them for one of the stock up kind of things, only because they were nowhere for a long time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think to myself, I sort of think, and this is where I lose my mind as someone who tries to predict the Oscars. Like, if you're in picture, best picture, then surely you're going to be appearing in, some of the acting categories, cinematography, director.
Right.
I mean, no Sarah Polley. I remember looking at the betting market a few months ago, and Steven Spielberg was the strong favorite up top. And I thought she would be one of the people to challenge him.
For sure.
She didn't even end up getting nominated. And then, I think there's a few dark horses in the race this year. One of which, I say dark horse, it's hardly a dark horse, but Top Gun. You can have a fascinating conversation around that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm learning a lot about the Oscars, the process of how the Academy votes. And I find it all fascinating because over the years, I'm a little bit naive and maybe too lovable at heart. And I'm sort of like, well, the best picture will win best picture. Not always the case, in my opinion.
Oh, never.
Or the best performance will be nominated. And we see that often, for example, Viola Davis, clearly the Hollywood Foreign Press, people at BAFTA, the Screen Actors Guild, and the critics say one of the best of the year, and the Academy shuts her out. So
right.
It's, it can be a frustrating thing to follow, but I'm learning as well about the power of campaigning. And Riseborough really, she will be talked about for years and years in Oscars punditry. It would be like, they can't get nominated. I'll remember Riseborough did it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really excited. I think the best picture race is fascinating. And I think the undercard, as the night progresses, is going to be really informative as to where the night is going. I think if something like Everything Everywhere starts picking up momentum early doors, I think it will probably win picture. But I said The Power of the Dog would probably win picture this time last year, and again I was wrong. So
yeah. I know, I hear you, and same here, obviously. And the one thing I'm slowly coming to a realization is that I feel with how many members they added and the extra diversity in age and gender and race and everything else that they've added over the years, I feel like we don't really know this Academy yet. And I feel like the only evidence we really have to go off is maybe the last couple of years. And even then, those have been COVID-affected years. So we don't really have a full look at what this new Academy is capable of or what they think of. I know it's weird to think of them as this giant monolith, but we kind of had evidence for decades where there was kind of things where you can be a better predictor of these things based on what they've done in the past or based on a lot of the precursors that led up to it or any of those things. But now it feels like the Oscars are kind of their own beast. And the closest thing that I could use as a predictor because of the number ratio and where they went internationally and everything else is that the BAFTAs were a better metric in more recent years. And then BAFTA went crazy and started doing these small little batch juries for their selections. So I have no idea who to trust in the precursors besides maybe the guilds. And even then, that's not a slam dunk, because if we learned anything about CODA last year, everything that you could have said it only had 3 nominations, it's super rare to get Best Picture out of that. Did it. I don't even know if they're a favorite in the other two ones besides Best Picture. How they're going to win it? Then they surprised people and took home like I believe they won Best Adapted Screenplay, right, or something along those lines beforehand. It was one of the other major ones they were up for, and so they ended up having some momentum at the end of the night where you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And also in the last few years, the film with the most nominations never wins. So you can't even tell me that like, oh, well, look at the show of strength here and this and that. It very rarely works out that way, or it hasn't been that way in a few years. So I think so many things are up in the air, and I'd like to address some of the things you were saying. First and foremost, I guess we'll touch on the Riseborough thing. Yeah, that's going to be a case study for people to go with going forward. However, I think they're quickly addressing it. I know the actual Academy ruled on whether it was an illegal campaign or did anything out of bounds, and whether the nomination was going to be rescinded, and they made their decision today, and she's still in the race. So I guess it wasn't crazy out of bounds, but I guess they said that they will be implementing new rules starting after this year's Oscars. So there was some line dancing, I guess, but maybe not rule breaking. I don't know. Like, it was right there to where they don't want to have this type of thing happen again, where it seems like the wrong people are doing the influencing in their minds, or however it's working. I'm not quite sure, but definitely people are mad. But even in that category, I think people are almost just as mad at Ana de Armas getting in, even though she has precursor stuff that made it more of an idea that should have been clear to happen. But yeah, Viola Davis and Danielle Deadwyler seem to be, especially at the beginning of all this, the smart picks, the more logical picks. I think Danielle Deadwyler, I don't want to say shot herself in the foot a little bit, but missing out on a speech moment early on in the process when she won for it was the Gothams or the Gothams, right? She won Best Actress at the Gothams, and she didn't show up because she was either on, I think they said she might have been on another movie or however it works, and she couldn't make the time. That's big when you're not like a household name. That is a big deal. But yeah, and even outside of Best Actress, I feel like the stock up candidates that I have written down, and maybe you can tell me otherwise. I have 5 films that I wrote down. All Quiet, which you mentioned, having many more nominations than many people thought. Triangle of Sadness, which was a surprise in Best Picture, let alone the fact that it lands in Best Director and Best Screenplay as well. The Fabelmans, I thought, was a stock up, especially when you consider getting in people like Judd Hirsch, which was not always an early precursor love, and had a potential to split votes with Paul Dano. And then Everything Everywhere All at Once, obviously getting the most nominations and having a bunch of show of strength nominations here with stuff like Best Song, Best Score, things like I didn't even think they were on the radar for, and they show up for that. Plus getting Jamie Lee Curtis and Stephanie Sue in Best Supporting, that's a big deal, even though people thought that might happen. And then Maverick. And Maverick, I think, people thought like, okay, it's going to do all the technical stuff, but so is Avatar, and Avatar has now made more money. It's Jim Cameron, he might get into, Jim Cameron might be in the Director 5, so, that might be more of a thing. That doesn't happen. Top Gun, seems to go neck and neck with all the effects and production design and those type of things, and now it's landed in adapted screenplay, which many people, when you think Top Gun Maverick, you're not thinking screenplay a lot. So I thought that was a big show of strength for them, which makes it kind of narrow down of like the 10 Best Picture nominees. I don't see more than 6 having a chance, even a sliver of a chance at Best Picture. But of course, again, we said a lot of those things about Coda early on, and then that ball just kept, rolling on, and then surprised us all. So where do you see like the strength, the power positions, the stock ups, if you will, happening here. Do you think I'm on the right track?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, to be honest, I think that screenplay nomination for Top Gun is really important. It's a real sign of strength. It's a big stock up for its best picture chances. And I'll be honest, and I have thought about this a lot. If Cruise had slipped in, and this is if, by the way, if Cruise had slipped in at number 5 in actor, and it also had cinematography, like legitimately, I'd be thinking about possibly even saying it might win.
Sure.
Like, because I just think, and I've been listening, I obviously listen to a lot of podcasts, but there's a lot of talk about, and particularly in England at the moment, there's a lot of articles about the Academy wants to be hip and trendy and really wants to, award films that people are watching.
Right.
And that obviously brings Top Gun and Avatar right into play.
Sure.
And out of those two, legitimately, the only one that could feasibly win picture is Top Gun. So yeah, that was really, really interesting. And another thing I just wanted to briefly mention, and you mentioned it earlier, was about the speech opportunity that was missed. I could not agree more. I was really worried, as someone who's been predicting Brendan Fraser for since middle of last year, and dare I say, the Duke of Bettingham has laid some cash out on him to win.
Sure.
His campaign seemed to be really struggling. Do not underestimate the power of that Critics' Choice win. And I don't even just mean the statue and what that represents, because obviously the Critics' Choice do like to, predict the Oscars.
Sure.
But his speech and the fact that speech was all over all over Twitter, all over the internet, all over the world news, and it's just putting him slap bang back in the conversation. And yeah, in terms of who's a player, like I was thinking about this, like you could legitimately make a very weak argument, and I mean very weak, for almost all of the pictures that are nominated, apart from Triangle of Sadness, because Triangle of Sadness has no PGA, I believe, no SAG Ensemble, no BAFTA. Like, unless I'm sort of boiling up some sort of poisonous chemical and inhaling it, I don't know how I can predict that to win picture.
Sure.
But really, you're bubbling down to, I think, Everything Everywhere All at Once versus Banshees, with Top Gun and The Fabelmans, the two that could beat it. But yeah,
I think Elvis and Tar are very much on the periphery. And what's weird, not to cut you off, but like The Fabelmans is an interesting thing where they have a few show of strength things here in the actual Oscar nominations. But the one thing is that BAFTA didn't seem to be too in love with The Fabelmans at all. And I don't know if that's going to count at the end of the day. I think I want to see more nominations in the Guild stateside to see where we land. But so I don't want to count them out. But at the same time, yikes! If that's a decent part of the expanded body of your new membership in the last few years, going internationally and going in that direction, it's not great for Spielberg and company. So do you? I feel like I said, Everything Everywhere, Banshees, Fabelmans, Elvis, Tar, and Top Gun are kind of the real players. Then everybody else is kind of like cast aside, with Women Talking, Triangle of Sadness, and All Quiet, weirdly, for being that celebrated. I just don't think it has a chance at Best Picture. And frankly, especially given Netflix's track record, I could see that potentially getting shut out or winning very, very little when it comes to Oscar night. How do you feel about All Quiet's chances?
Well, do you know what? I'm really pleased you mentioned Elvis, and I'll come on to All Quiet secondly, if you don't mind, because Elvis, for me, when I look at the betting, Elvis is like almost the rank outsider, i.e. the bookmakers think it has the least chance of winning. And I don't see that, like, particularly if Austin Butler was to win SAG and then obviously take actor. It has, I think, 8 nominations overall.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot more than you thought.
And also, it's another film, along with Avatar and Top Gun, that a lot of people have seen. So I obviously know a lot of film nerds, and we've seen everything, or trying to see everything. But like mates who aren't film buffs, I talk to them, what have you seen this year? I've seen Avatar, I've seen Top Gun, I've seen Elvis. And I think if the Academy's going to want to reward films that people are watching, Elvis certainly comes into it. And it's an interesting angle, and there is an angle for it to win, but it's like the eye of a needle kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
As for All Quiet, do you know, if it absolutely dismantled BAFTA, and I think it has 14 noms off the top of my head,
Yeah.
if it like had an amazing BAFTA, I think it makes it an outside contender. But the problem is that's the British Academy. It's not the American Academy. And, you know, if All Quiet was also nominated for the Producers Guild,
Right.
and say had a SAG Ensemble nomination, because the ensemble cast in that film is fantastic.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it'll be much more in the conversation. But my worry for All Quiet is a little bit like it's going to be a 9-nomination film, and it's going to sort of win. I haven't tallied it up, but very few.
I think it's 1917.
Well, to be honest, I thought it's difficult,
And even
to compare
less
them.
because it's not a premier director.
You know, if I had to compare them, I would say I preferred All Quiet on the Western Front. I thought it was a bit more gritty and real, and really quite harrowing.
Sure.
And I'd like to see it do well. And, you know, this has been a strange year for me, because it's the year, it's been the year where, when I follow the betting, every film that's due to come out, people have been sort of backing. So when Babylon hadn't come out, people were like, Babylon's going to win Best Picture. And then before the Fabelmans came out, the Fabelmans will win Best Picture. And all of this happened, and it was, people were waiting for what was going to win Best Picture. And actually what's ended up happening is people have been looking back to Everything Everywhere All at Once, looking back to Top Gun.
Yep.
And I've said before, and I need to rewatch all of them. I feel like some people are saying it's a great year. I feel it's a little bit weaker, but I have to remember, and I'm learning that I have to take my personal opinion out of analysing the Oscars.
Sure.
Because if I was the Academy, A Star is Born would have won 400 Oscars, including Lady Gaga, but
I don't
I'm
think
not
you're
an
alone
Academy
in
member
that.
yet.
Yeah.
But no, it is fascinating. But I think you're right with your analysis there. And Triangle of Sadness is the one that legitimately, like, I think if that one picture, which it won't, the world would just turn in on itself in a massive black hole.
Yeah.
Because it would make absolutely no sense
It's,
from an analytical angle.
Yeah.
There's just no evidence for it to do that.
Yeah, I know some people, for them, Elvis is the one that they're like, God, why is this here? I hated this thing or whatever, and just couldn't stand it. Especially the Tom Hanks of it all. I can't argue. It had to really, really warm up as the movie went on. But I ended up liking that movie more than many other people, maybe in the critical side, or people of a younger age, especially, who don't have maybe as strong a relationship to Elvis or whatever. But I think the movie is deserving to be there, whether you call it 10 or 1 is your own mileage on it. But I think especially knowing the last few years of like what's been celebrated, no one should be shocked that this ended up there. If Bo Rap ended up, Bohemian Rhapsody ended up there, and a lot of these films that are even remotely close at least get celebrated somehow. A lot of people, if you talk to them months ago, they thought Elvis was a 1 nomination thing. It's all Austin Butler and nothing else. The fact that we're seeing it in editing, the fact that we're seeing it, across the board on kind of like some of the below the line stuff, like production design and costume design and everything else, I think it says a lot about how much love there is for it across the board with the Academy. So that's why I still kind of like count it in, because it's just something about Everything Everywhere All at Once, and the fact that like these movies in the last few years, there's been no consensus pick. And a lot of times they go, all right, well, they spread the wealth more now than ever. They're like, I feel like we're never going to see like a Silence of the Lambs again. We're not going to see where it just one film steamrolls the entire night. You know what I mean? So it just feels like that's never going to happen again. And to happen with a smaller film like Everything Everywhere All at Once would be a massive, massive thing. Because even some of the smaller films that have been more triumphant in the last, say, 10 years, something like, say, a Moonlight or a Parasite or things like that, they didn't win a ton on the night, and they definitely didn't lead a lot on the nominations. you know? So, and a lot of people didn't pick them to win going in as well. This one, it's so weird to see such a small film be a front runner. And that's why I just feel like this odd sense of vulnerability. I'm like, it can't be this easy. You know what I mean? And especially with this Academy.
Yeah, and I can tell you for a fact now that when it comes to doing my predictions a couple of days before the Oscars, I won't be predicting everything everywhere all at once. That's because I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I didn't like it. So there's that angle, but it just feels vulnerable. It's like it's definitely up top. It's leading the pack, but it's got like a massive target on its back.
Yeah.
And it's like something like Banshees or the Fabelmans or Top Gun can just sort of sneak past at the last minute. Because that's how I felt when I watched it. I thought, take my opinions out of this.
Mm-hmm.
How's the Academy going to receive this film? And I know we talked earlier about, it's a more modern Academy, a more diverse Academy, and that will certainly help something like this, and probably be detrimental to something like the Fabelmans.
Right.
But is it like, I don't know. I think it would be an extraordinary Best Picture winner, in the sense that it would be very different. I know recent years we've had things like Parasite and Coda, so there is a trend that times are changing.
Yeah.
But if I was to watch all 10 of these films, just in a couple of days,
Yeah.
and you said to me, these are Best Picture nominees, and I didn't know anything about the precursors, I didn't know anything about how many Oscar nominations it had, Everything Everywhere All at Once would be way down on my list of what I think the Academy would vote for. The Fabelmans and Banshees and Tar would be much higher than that. So I'm with you. I think it could get beat. I won't be predicting it, which means it will probably win.
That's right. So let's get to something that I maybe kind of moves in with this. Do you see any slam dunk winners? Like, what's the strongest confidence that you have in some of these categories? Because to me, I had 3 written down. Otherwise, I think it's pretty well spread out for certain things. But of the big awards, especially, I have 3 that feel like the closest to slam dunk winners. Do you have any in mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that stand out, not only from the precursors, from the evidence that we've got, but also looking at the betting odds. I think Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is as good a slam dunk as a slam dunk can be.
Yeah.
In animated feature.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Marcel with Shoes On or Puss in Boots. You can make a case, but I can't see that getting beat. So I think that's sort of pretty slam dunk. Ke-Huy Quan, Everything Everywhere All at Once in supporting.
Yeah.
Again, I just think it's very hard to sort of pick against him, really. You've got 2 people in there from Banshees. Then you've got Judd Hirsch from The Fabelmans and Brian Tyree Henry from Causeway, who I think's great performance, and he's delighted to be there.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty locked up as well. And then international feature, I think they're the same as you, actually.
Yeah, those are my 3.
In All Quiet on the Western Front, because it's like, it has, what did we say it had? It had a good amount of nominations, 9 nominations, including Best Picture. I don't see how it loses international. So yeah, I think those 3 are pretty nailed on at the moment, but I've learned over the years that there's no such thing as a good thing. You can ask Glenn Close that. She learned that a few years ago. So, and the late great Chadwick Boseman as well. We do see surprises, but they would be my 3 that are pretty, bulletproof, or as bulletproof as one can be.
I agree. And obviously, if somebody from that Banshees contingent especially overtook Ke-Huy Quan, I think that's an ultimate show of strength for Banshees, where that might mean that they're going to win Best Picture. Because to me, my favorite thing of Everything Everywhere at Once was Ke-Huy Quan, which is obnoxious probably to a lot of people because the movie is essentially a mother-daughter story. But I thought he was so compelling and has so many great speeches and moments and things that he just drops in, as opposed to like he's kind of the person in the middle of this waging war that's going through such a spectacle of a film that I think if he doesn't win, I think, it's a big sign that maybe the night is not going to go everything everywhere all at once's way. The other two kind of dovetails into something else I like to talk to you about, of course, is the Netflix stuff, because we always think that, Netflix always has a lot of nominations. They always have usually more than one Best Picture nominee. This year, that is not the case, and they're also not the leading nomination getter. But we've also talked in the past that, like, maybe it would be smarter for them to have less pictures to focus on, and to really go after like category specific things and be able to really slam on some things. And I think they would be over the moon if All Quiet and Pinocchio win in their respective categories, because I don't think they believe that they're going to win a ton up and down the card. I think you might get a couple of things for All Quiet, in below the line stuff. But really, those two are the ones that I think if they took them home, they're going to feel good about their year. What do you think about the Netflix thing and the fact that, as far as streamers are concerned, they're really the only representatives?
Yeah, I mean, it's we spoke in depth last year on Road to the Oscars about the power of the streamers, and we looked at Amazon and Netflix and Disney and Apple, and it was a fascinating conversation. And I think Netflix have to be pleased. If you win animated feature and best international feature, like that's a great success. And for me, it felt like Netflix's angle, or has been over the last 2 years, has just been content. The more we put out, the more nominations we get, the more Oscars will win. And actually, I haven't got the stats in front of me, but when we spoke last year and the year before, the conversion ratio for Netflix was atrocious.
Yeah, yep.
From the number of nominations to the number of Oscars that they were getting, it was really poor.
Yeah.
So actually, less nominations in and sort of targeting categories can work for them in the way they campaign these films and the way they get the branch that they need to watch them to watch that film.
Sure.
And the streaming question is a really fascinating one, and I think COVID changed a lot about how we as a society view streaming services, how the Academy views streaming services, and it's an interesting conversation. But I think Netflix should be fairly pleased, and I think I will do the maths and I'll get back to you after the Oscars. This will, I would think, this would be one of their better years in terms of nominations to wins ratios. I would imagine.
I would imagine too, because I think they have 16 nominations this year. Usually they're in the 20s, as it seems every year. But the amount of wins they get is usually, at best like 2 or 3. So if they get 2 or 3 again, but they have less nominations, then sure, it just looks almost like a better year.
Better.
And especially if you're them and you want to kind of not save face, but like White Noise is a perfect example of a movie that they thought was going to be here. And honestly, I like that movie the more I watch it. But the absolute downfall, or the tragedy, I guess, of White Noise being like, it was an opening night film in New York Film Festival. It did a lot of noise. I believe it was in Venice early on too. It was a showcase type film. And yet, it doesn't even sniff the Oscars as we get into here. So that's a story I haven't heard in a long time, of something being that pushed out, that prominent, and then to not land is a sad note. But again, if they win for a couple of prominent categories, I think they'll be pretty satisfied with that overall. But yeah, the streamer effect, it's completely flipped from when Coda was. It's kind of, we were wondering what the reaction was going to be. Was it going to be, oh, Coda won, is this now the time of the streamers? Or is it going to, be a backlash to it? And I'd say it's closer to the latter. But, I mean, Apple's still in play they have a Causeway nomination, so they can't feel completely empty-handed in a year where Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon got pushed back and Will Smith's movie, is compromised. So for them to have anything, I'm sure they're a little bit encouraged, but it's not this big sweeping thing that we thought may occur going into the year. But just one more Netflix point. The one thing I did say on nomination morning is that, and I wonder if you either saw it or you agree or however, it feels like poor Edward Berger for All Quiet, the director of All Quiet on the Western Front. He feels to me a lot like this year's Denis Villeneuve, where a lot of people should be like, wow, a movie got a bunch of nominations, below the line for the picture itself and everything else, all these accomplishments, score, you name it, it's all there. And then not to end up in Best Director is just like, it makes you scratch your head. Like the director doesn't have any influence on the success of the film. Like, what are we talking about here? Why is Triangle of Sadness in there and not Edward Berger? That makes no sense.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it is a bit like Denis Villeneuve. Last year with Dune, because you look at a film like Dune or All Quiet, and particularly All Quiet, let's focus on that. I mean, you look at the way that they have, or the director, has crafted this film, put it all together, a film that is very hard to do. And on such a broad scale, and everyone, when 1917 came out, everyone was treating Sam Mendes like the second coming of Christ. He was the best thing since sliced bread. But this director here has 9 Oscar nominations, but misses director, and it doesn't add up. And that's where I get frustrated as someone who likes to look at the stats and the evidence. I'm glad you mentioned the word evidence earlier, because I've been thinking a lot about. Well, like a solicitor, let me get the evidence together and see what I can do.
I think it's because I fell asleep watching Poker Face last night. I think it's really happening.
It doesn't make sense. It legitimately doesn't make sense. And there are a few head scratchers in there, but there always is. And it's an interesting one, but it's going to be very fascinating to see next year how Killers of the Flower Moon does. You mentioned earlier, and it made me laugh, about something steamrolling. That's the kind of film that might do that. But again, it being an Apple TV release, you'll scratch your head, and if you're like me, you'll end up in a straitjacket and a padded cell. So
yeah. Well, plus it's an Apple thing, but it's also a Scorsese thing, because we could have a whole replay of the Irishman thing where look at this cast, we can't. Can't not have this win, and just out of nowhere, it's Parasite and other people just beating him at every turn.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because you take 10 Oscars experts and you show them on paper the director and the cast and the ultimate project of Parasite versus The Irishman. Mm-hmm. They're everyone's going to say, what do you think is more likely to win more Oscars? Everyone would say The Irishman.
Yeah.
Because that is that, but things are changing, and, it's exciting to see, but predicting it and following it makes it an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to wrap this up. This has been a great conversation, man, and obviously we'll have more to talk about as things progress here. One last big thing. I'm curious to know the betting odds on Best Animated Short, because I think for the first time in my life, with sight unseen, I am rooting the hardest for My Year of Dicks, because I am internally a 13-year-old boy trapped in this body, and I wonder, are you also rooting for that? Is there good money on My Year of Dicks, simply because it's a majority male Academy that rarely watches all these things? Part of me is thinking it's going to win sheerly on that alone.
So yeah, actually, it's a fascinating category, and just the names of that category.
There's one more in there too. What is it? Because
it is An Ostrich Told Me the World is Fake, and I think I believe it.
Yeah, that's my other one. If I had to, I'm okay with either of those winning sight unseen.
To answer your question, the favourite in that category, i.e. the most likely to win according to the bookmakers, is actually an animated short called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. I don't
That's
know if
because
you've
it's
seen
Apple
it.
TV Plus and people can see it now. That's part of it.
I love that. If you haven't seen The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, I recommend it. It's a thoroughly heartbreaking little animated short. My Year of Dicks is about 7-1, third favourite, and the Ostrich is the rank outsider at 12-1. And I was doing a little bit of research during my lunch break for this episode. I get an hour at lunch in the office, and I Googled My Year of Dicks, and I got some strange looks from my work colleagues. And I did explain to them that I was going on a podcast, and they said, "Yeah, sure, we've heard it all before."
Listen,
but there you go. It's
all I know right now is I desperately wanted to win. So how many people do I have to contact, or can I contact Edward Norton directly? Because apparently his power over the Andrea Riseborough thing and everything else, I want that for My Year of Dicks. So who's the celebrity that I need to get out there for My Year of Dicks? Who's going to, come to my aid? Any famous Richards, anything that we can do here to just get My Year of Dicks. Maybe a co-sponsorship, something with Dick's Sporting Goods, anything that can help. That is going to do it is something that I want for this year, just to break up the monotony. Let's stop being so serious. Also, the one thing I want to keep an eye on too, David, and is remember when Coda won? What was the thing that I said about Power of the Dog and why it was not going to win? Because it's a bummer.
Yeah, bummer.
And that's why, to me, I think anyone thinking Tar is going to win, I think is out of their mind. Yeah. So, and you can kind of tell with the ones that are kind of rising to the top, they're more of like a fun or entertaining piece. Yeah. Where I think, I don't think Tar is. I think Tar is falling back maybe because of that purpose. I think I think people respect it like Power of the Dog, but I think it will ultimately be more of like a 1 or 2 win thing.
Yeah, and that's why. You talk about being a bummer, and I loved that conversation last year. That's why, and you were right. You called it. You said, it led with nominations, and it was the critics' darling, and ultimately it got beat. And that's why the Banshees of Inisherin may struggle, because that's a heavy film. And I was really excited about that movie, one of my most sort of anticipated of the year, and I struggled with it in some sense because it was just so heavy. And I just wonder, Martin McDonagh there's a fantastic director, how that will go down, because it is a heavy piece. And so that brings in the, Top Gun and the Fabelmans, because All Quiet's not exactly sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd like to see Avatar do well. I have to say I don't like films in 3D, and I'm not a massive science fiction fan, but I loved Avatar 2 in IMAX 3D. How he made that movie will baffle me to the end of my days, because it was just like, wow.
I don't understand how that movie's not a best animated feature. Somebody's going to need to explain these things to me, because it's mocap versus what. I don't care. It boggles my mind. That movie is way more animated than Marcel the Shell, and I don't get it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to my world. There are many things I don't get, and the Oscars is one of them.
Exactly. Well, it's good that I brought you on as an Oscar expert then. Thank you, David, for being on with us. Anything to plug or anything? You're going to be on Mike and Oscar soon? Any of that stuff?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my good friend and co-producer, presenter Craig Fields. He got married at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Wonderful day at his wedding. So we've had a little bit of a break from the podcast because I'm no longer the most important thing in his life.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I get it.
But I'll forgive him. We'll be back. We're going to be back doing some Is It Worth It main show episodes end of February, March.
Sweet.
And then I'm going to be guesting on Mike and Oscar and anyone else mad enough to have me. Follow me on Twitter at @OneDavidLong. I tweet a lot about the Oscars, particularly Oscars betting. So if you want to lose your mind and probably money, come follow me.
Exactly. Much appreciated, David, as always. And obviously for anyone, if this is your first time listening, maybe in the UK, any of that stuff, please check us out, subscribe us, go back in other episodes, give us 5 stars, do the whole thing, and be sure to join us for more recent activity.